reasons. Why modulate? The reason number one is enable
Sir?
the long distance communication. Information signal is a limited power. So in order to enhance its power, in order to transmit it over the long distance, we are going to modulate it. How? That is the now question. So first reason why modulate, the reason number one, enable long distance communication. Information signal is limited power. You can shout to increase the strength of your voice, but it won't get you far. That could be a very simple words if you can understand कि हम अपने वॉइस को शाउट करके उसकी स्ट्रेंथ तो बढ़ा सकते हैं, लेकिन हम उसको लॉन्ग डिस्टेंस ट्रांसमिशन के लिए इनेबल नहीं कर सकते. सो व्हाट टू डू, how to make it possible that enable long distance communication and to enhance the power of the information signal. So superimpose the information signal on a high power carrier signal. That is also very important. So one thing that we are going to modulate, we are going to take another signal that is a carrier signal. We are going to superimpose our basic information signal, message signal, user data signal on a high frequency and high power signal. That is actually the carrier signal. So also high frequency, because an antenna radiates greater power at higher frequencies. So first reason is that. Now second, why modulate? Make the design of wireless communication system simpler. How? Suppose you are want to transmit your voice signal over a radio. You can convert the mechanical wave voice signal into the electrical signal using a transducer such as a microphone. Now a pair of antenna would be required. So antenna need to have a length of lambda by 2. So that first thing, okay, enable long distance transmission, and due to the low power, limited power of the information signal, we are going to superimpose it on the carrier. The second is make the design of wireless communication system simpler. How the design will be simpler? Now the reason is in front of you. Minimum frequency 300 hertz. So if you divide one with 300, if what is the speed of light, 3 into 10 power 8, if you will compute 1 million meters, so antenna length required will be lambda by 2. Then if you are high frequency signal you are taking, then the range can becomes and antenna size has been decreased. So if we conclude this point, okay, make the design of wireless communication system simpler is the your one student. I think then the point is, let us now take the GSM transmission where the signal is transmitted in the 9 megahertz. Again the antenna length is going to be smaller. So these are the particular reasons. This is the very theoretical. I am not going in detail. What is a why modulate 5 enables simultaneous multi-user communication. Multi-users can communicate communication with minimal or no interference at the same time. At the time multiple users can communicate with each other. Voice frequency typically lie between the 300 and 3400. For the sake of convenience, take it 4000. If two or more people want to talk, they will interfere with each other and interference will feel like a noise. So this is why to modulate user 1, user 2, user 3, and information for the user 1, 2, 3 without modulation. And everyone transmitted the band same frequency पे अगर different users transmit करेंगे तो what will be the result? Simultaneous transmission result in the corrupted of the information. Whatever their voice message is, that will lose its originality. So what is the reason now? If we are going to modulate, we are going to provide the different frequency ranges. We are going to enable the multi-user transmission. User 1 transmit in 0 to 4000, user 2 transmitted 5000 to 9000, then again 10,000 to 14,000. So at the end no interference when they transmit simultaneously. So one of the fundamental reason again is the simultaneous multi-user transmission. Now I am coming to the basics of the modulation. That was actually background 5 to 7 reasons I have included. I think you have also covered it in very much detail in theory. Just I have reviewed it for you. And one thing that you have noted for the antenna length, I would request that please share from 43 so that we can discuss it and verify it. Then the taxonomy of the modulation scheme. Now, what is the word taxonomy? Means arrange. Analog modulation scheme, there are the digital modulation scheme. So analog modulation scheme when the input signal is analog, and digital modulation scheme when the input signal is digital. So if you recall your first lab, we have even in the second lab in the introduction, when we cover the basics of the signal, we cover that signal can be analog signal, can be the digital signal, and we made a comparison between the analog and digital signal. So according to the nature signal, modulation can be analog modulation and the digital modulation. Now these are the modulation schemes. One are the analog modulation scheme, other is the analog to digital modulation scheme, third is digital to digital modulation scheme, fourth is digital to analog modulation scheme. So now our focus will be on the analog to analog modulation scheme, and what are the different classification of analog to analog modulation scheme is amplitude modulation, frequency modulation, and phase. What are the analog digital modulation scheme? Delta modulation, pulse code modulation PCM, pulse width modulation, and pulse position modulation PPM. Then third one is digital to digital modulation scheme, means line coding scheme. Then the fourth one is also very important, digital to analog modulation scheme, amplitude shift key, frequency shift key, phase shift key. In our communication system lab, we have the two different modules. One will be based on the analog modulation scheme and other will be based on the digital modulation scheme. On the one prototype module, we can perform the amplitude, frequency, and phase. On the other end, that is a digital modulation technique, we can perform the amplitude shift key, frequency shift key, and phase shift key. This is actually the chart that is representing the modulation scheme with respect to the nature of the signal. So there are the four classification, then there are the sub classification of the modulation scheme. Four should be very clear: analog to analog, analog to digital, digital to digital, digital